Hey, welcome back. It is project number 2 in Scratch Camp. I'm Dave, as always. Today I'm sporting my red 2017 Connecting with Code shirt.
And I'm Bob. Good to see you all again. I've got on my most recent, although there's a new shirt coming out for this camp, so I say most recent, but by the time you're watching this, there'll be another shirt that you can order, and they will be sending you the information on that.
Cool. All right, so we'll dive in. I'll let Bob kind of remind us of our themes for this camp.
Yeah, as we mentioned last time, we thought it'd be fun to have each of our projects link in some way to sustainability. And as I shared in the first video, sustainability goes beyond just the nature component. In fact, if you look at the sustainability compass, as it's called on the left, you see that nature, economy, well-being, and society are all reflected. And the United Nations came out with a list of 17 sustainable development goals. And today we are going to go on to the box number 12, responsible consumption and production. Our link to that is recycling and throwing away trash. And so the game we're going to make today is going to involve trash falling from the sky and trying to catch it in an appropriate bucket that you get to toggle between either a recycling bin or a trash bin based on what it is that you're trying to catch. And the more things that you do correctly, the more points you get. And once you've made a certain number of mistakes, the game ends. So that's our goal for the day.
Very well said, Dr. Bob. I'll go ahead and show you a solution. So try not to give away any code that we're going to make today, but I'll try to show you the solution. So the idea is that I can use the left and the right arrows. This looks like it's probably trash to me. Was that a good sound or a bad sound? I don't know. And so I can use the left and right arrows to move my trash bin around. It's going so fast. I can also switch it to a recycle bin by hitting R. So I can hit T for trash, R for recycle. And you can see I can switch back and forth. So I want to recycle these guys. Yeah, so I'm recycling glass. Glass is recyclable. Milk cartons are recyclable. So my number correct is just going crazy right here. Now if I try to recycle boots, that's going to go bad. Yeah, so I had lost the game on recycling boots. And so it's a very complex game, right? This is going to take us a while. So just like, it's big, right? So the number that I caught correctly there was I caught 7 correct. The number that I caught incorrectly that time was 3. And the number that hit the ground was 7. And the idea of this particular game is that you get to go, I'm not going to play it full time here, you get to go until you mess up 10 times. So I trashed these guys, so that's fine. And then I'm going to recycle my glass bottles. I'm going to trash my shoes. I'm going to recycle this. You can see I'm playing perfect here, right? So I'm just doing a great job. This is surely trash, right? Yeah, okay. I was making sure. And so you kind of see how the game works. Sound good? It's going to be awesome.
Sounds good.
I love it.
And then the ways that you can actually make mistakes, if Dave catches that recyclable material in a trash bucket that caught incorrectly went up, and when those things hit the ground, you see the hits ground went up. And as soon as the sum of the caught incorrectly and hits ground reaches 10,
I'll go try to recycle some shoes. I'll trash this.
That Dave was talking about. And there you go. 3 plus 7, in fact, equals 10. And that ended the game.
Yeah, so pretty cool.
So Dave mentioned that this is a big game. But big game, small game, the size of the project, every project is done one line of code at a time. And that's the way we're going to tackle it. We're going to look for small little victories that we'll try to accomplish and make pieces of this game. This game, when Dave and I developed it, was not written all in one sitting from beginning to end with every bell and whistle you just saw. We thought about it and we thought we'd make a game, and so the first thing we did was we built a bucket and we started talking about what to catch, and we talked about how that would work, and we talked about points, and so it was very incremental. What we present to you here might turn into a 45-minute, hour-long video, but it is a condensed version of the process that happened behind the scenes. So when you see this, I don't want you to get the thought that this is something that happens very quickly or right away, even for experienced programmers. This is a process. Sometimes you're distracted by dogs. There's all sorts of things that can happen when you're writing code that can slow you down. So it's rarely done in one sitting, and you should just be aware of that it's a process, and if this feels challenging to you, or it feels like something that's going to take time for you, that's normal. That is expected and part of the process.
Yep. Very well said. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is pause the video and go kick my dogs out. Dogs! Go.
Fair enough.
Come on, Finn. All right, now let's oops, sorry, I'll just stop it there. I always leave pauses because that way I can find it easier. All right, so let's dive in. The first thing we want to do is, was there a cat in this game? There's no cat in this game. Blow the cat away. We didn't need the cat. So I made a new project. Hopefully you saw that I was doing that. Oh, I typed in the word recycling, maybe spelled correctly, and I got rid of the cat. So what I need in my game is I'm going to start with a trash can. So I'm going to add a new sprite. It's kind of down here by Bob's head. I'm going to add a new sprite. And my trash can, I'm going to actually start with a bowl. So a bowl is a good thing, and so bowls are good. Now, what I actually want to do with this bowl is I actually want 2 different costumes for this bowl. And so I'm going to, as soon as I can put us back over there, I'm going to go into the costumes here. And you can see that right now there's only 1 bowl. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the bowl. So now I've got 2 bowls. And so now I can switch between, it calls it Bowl A and Bowl A2. Those aren't very good names, by the way, for my bowls. You can set the name of a costume right here. So I'm going to have one be trash. And then the other be recycling. Now, right now, these 2 costumes, one is called trash, one is called recycling. They look the same, so I need to make them different. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bowl just a little bigger. I don't know. And then trash. Trash is bad, so I'm going to make trash like some kind of red color maybe. And you can make yours whatever you want. And I'm going to write on the word here trash, which is do I know why you can't see it? It's because the color of the text is the same as the color of the bowl. So I actually want the text to be a different color. Maybe I'll make it, there you go, it's nice gray. To change the size of the text, you just grab a handle and you just kind of move it around here. All right, so there I've got my trash costume. And then if I click on the other costume, you'll notice over here it switched back to this bowl. So there's my trash can. And then this bowl, I think what I want to do is I want to click on this select tool. I want to select this bowl. And I did it really fast the first time. Maybe you'll catch it the second time. I'm going to drag it a little bigger again towards roughly the same size as the other one. I think they're close. Recycling's good. So recycling is going to be green. Maybe like a cooler green than that. Maybe there's a good green. And then I'm going to write the word on here, recycling. Which is, of course, again, in the same color as the bowl. I think this time I'll make it be black, and my dog got back in here, so I'm going to have to fix that. All right, so there is recycling and trash. I'm going to pause the video again and kick my dogs out again.
Something Dave did, I think, really well there is he matched the size of the recycling bin exactly to that of the trash. If your ability to match those isn't perfect, you could make the trash bin in its entirety and then wait to duplicate it until after you've done that, and then just change the color and the word color, so that way you're aware that the size is the same. But if you want to have artistic license to maybe have those things be potentially slightly different, that's a perfectly valid way to approach that as well.
Cool. Thanks, Bob. Next thing I want to do is I'm working on kind of a white backdrop here. I don't know why, but I think I'll fix that next. So if you want to switch your backdrop, you can actually just click on this button down here for choose a backdrop, and you can choose any backdrop you want. There's no reason to pick one thing versus another. I think in ours I picked like metro, just because, like, I don't know, cities and recycling, it seemed like a very appropriate type thing. So if you want to pick the same thing as us, that's the one that we picked, but it doesn't really matter. The next thing I want to do is I want to handle the trash can itself. So the trash can itself needs to move back and forth with the arrow keys, and then R and T need to switch the costume. So those are my goals. And so what I want to do is I want to click on, it's called bowl here. That's fine. I guess I could call it, it's a bin, right? So I lived in Ireland for a while, call it a bin. And so my bin needs some code. So usually your code starts with an event. So when some event happens, you start the program. Almost always that event is when green flag clicked. And when the green flag is clicked, it could start who knows where, but I want it to start somewhere kind of towards the bottom. That looks like it's pretty much on the bottom. That looks like a pretty good height for me. And so I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to say go to, and then just because I'm a little OCD, I can't handle going to a -1. I'm going to go right to 0, and then -129, that feels like a -130 to me. You can make yours a slightly different height. There will be some things that come up with height later, but now you can start anywhere, and we hit the green flag, it'll snap to that spot. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to have a forever loop. So we're going to tell this guy to do things forever, and he's going to forever be listening for and responding to the buttons. So forever is in control, and we bring over a forever loop. And once you've done a couple things in Scratch, starts like this, they'll just become second nature. Bob, do you want to do R and T first, or do you want to do left and right first? I'm fine with either. Any preference?
Let's go ahead and go left and right first. We'll get our motion down. We can verify this thing is moving, and then we'll go ahead and put in the code to make sure that we can toggle it back and forth between trash and recycling.
Cool. Sounds great.
So last time, if you're watching these videos in order, you remember that we developed code where if you pressed a button, something would happen, right? We could press a 1, 2, 3, or a 4, and the house would get drawn in different ways. We could press letters, and then we made different colors happen. Before we do things in this video, we're going to talk about what we're about to do, and then we're going to do it. I'd encourage you throughout this video, turn this into a 3-4 hour day-long experience, multi-day experience if you want. Pause and see if you can think about how you would write the code to do the thing we're about to do. In this case, we're going to go ahead and find a way to determine if a certain key has been pressed. We're going to move a particular direction. So pause it for a second or think about that, but we'll go ahead and continue with the plan. The plan now is to, as I said, if a certain key is pressed. So Dave's going to find the appropriate control. It's on the screen right now. You're going to find if, then. That's a standard coding mechanism. And what's going to go inside that diamond, we're looking for, something to indicate that a certain button has been pressed. So under sensing, you can find the various things that we might sense. And one of those is currently as key space pressed. When you see the pull down, we're going to be able to decide other things that we put there.
Cool.
So yeah, we're doing left and right. Go ahead, Dave, you can take over.
Yeah, no, I just I love that Bob remembers to say things that I forget. So there's two ways to do key pressed, and this actually is the one we want. The other one, just to kind of remember from last time, is this when something is pressed event, right? Now, these two things are different in that this if statement approach, this would need to be inside the forever loop, and then this one is kind of like its own event. And now what the difference is this one it happens one time when you click it, right? And so let's say you wanted one thing to happen one time when you clicked it. You could do something like this, and that would work out well. This style over here is good because it can be continuous, right? So we actually want to move left while we're holding it down. And so, like, if I wanted to do, you can just watch just for a minute. If I wanted to do this approach, I could say change X by -10 on the left arrow. And if I do this, every time I hit the left arrow, it moves 1. And I have to hit it like to move it really fast. But if I take the same code and I put it over here, then all of a sudden I can hit the green flag, and my code is now running. Now when I hold down the left arrow, it actually just goes that way. So you can decide for your game. This one's called like a continuously reading the state, and then this one is on an event. So I think that for left and right arrow, I think that I actually want to do this one. Oh, this code right here is actually correct. I can put this in here. And the -10 determines your speed. If you want it to go fast, you can do like -10. If you want to go at a more reasonable speed, I'd say 5 is a more reasonable speed. And if I am doing left, then I also want to do right. I could obviously drag all these things over again. The other thing you could do just to remember is if you right click like near the word if, you could actually just duplicate it, right? I'm going to do it again just to show you where these all came from. So control had the if statement. I'm going to put it down here. Sensing, that makes sense. Sensing is where you sense if the key is pressed. So if this condition is true, then run that code. And the condition is right arrow.
And before Dave does this last part, I'll encourage you to pause and think about what would you have to do for this one to move to the right? What has to be different than what we did for the left arrow? Go ahead, Dave.
Cool. I'll do it. I'm going to do a mistake just for fun, just because mistakes are good. What happens if I put in that? So, all right. So this happens all the time in your games. I hit my green flag to start in. I hit my left arrow, and then I hit my right arrow. And my right arrow doesn't really work. Just every time I press the right arrow, it just kind of snaps back to there. And you can see, because you know that I made a mistake, you can see what I did wrong. The first time I used change X by, the second time I used set X to. And I see people do this all the time, and it's fine. But you can understand the difference. Set just always goes to a set spot. Change goes from where you're at, and it just makes it changed, right? All right, so now I should be able to go left, and I should be able to go right. I'm currently cruising along at 5. You can decide what's fun for you in your game. 5 is going to make it to where you're going to have to plan ahead to get to some things, so it's kind of a little harder. 10 is a little bit easier. Whatever makes you happy is what you should go with.
Another thing that we're going to get to think about as we progress through this game is how fast our trash and recycling falls.
Yeah.
And so you may come up with a game that's a little bit slower paced at first and set your things to fall more slowly and therefore set your trash bin to move more slowly. And then as you get better at that game, you might go in and actually, in a lot of games that you purchase and are playing, there's levels that you can play at. You get to dive right into the code and make it harder or easier based on your desires. So if you decide you want everything to move faster, you can come back here and change those 5s to 10s and make it move faster. And, all sorts of different control that you have when you're writing your own game.
Yeah, tweaking games is so fun. All right, so for recycling and trash, like changing the costumes, we talked about the 2 different ways that you could do key events. Just to prove that I can, I'm going to, instead of using this approach for switching the costumes, I'm going to use the other approach just because I can, right? So I'm going to click on Events. I'm going to take when space pressed and change this to the R, not right arrow, but actually R. And whenever somebody hits R, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Looks, and I'm going to switch the costume to recycling. This is kind of cool. See how it says these names, trash and recycling? That's because in the costumes, I actually went to the trouble of naming them recycling and trash. And so the name you put here is actually like meaningful in your code. I think that's pretty cool. And then the other event that I'll grab is if I have a T, then I'm going to go into Looks, and I'm going to have a switch costume to trash. Now, if you think about it, I could have done this differently. So there's my trash, there's my recycling. So T is for trash, R is for recycling. You can leave yours like this. That's a totally acceptable way to do it. The other way that you could have done it, I'm just going to kind of show you, is you could have like put it in here and done R and T in here. R and T. Cool, nailed it. And then I could actually put that code into here. Now, either of these options would have worked. I think what I'll do is just kind of show you that this option does work. So if I hit T, it changes to trash, R, it changes to recycling. But to be honest, I don't really care which you do. I wonder if I can restore this, Control Z my way out. I can Control C my way a little bit of the way out. I don't care what you do. I think that I'm going to leave mine to where we use the R and the T approach that were over here. And then you're probably going to have to pause the video because I probably messed you up. So make sure that your code is functional in the same way that mine's functional. And I don't mind which approach you do it. And hopefully it's comfortable on your keypad to where you can do R and T with like your left hand and then left and right with your other hand. Now, left and right had to be in the loop. These could be whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that Dave kind of said, hopefully it's convenient for you. This was something that we actually talked about when we designed this game. And, first thing we thought about was what letters do we want to use for recycling and trash. And we actually were quite happy that R was recycling, T was trash, and they happened to be next to each other on the keyboard. If you were designing a game where there's two buttons that are not next to each other on the keyboard, perhaps you need to think about different words that you want to use to represent, or just have different letters mean different things. But in game design, you're always thinking about what is this going to be like for the player? When you're playing this game, or when one of your friends or family are playing this game, what do you want their experience to be like? And these are the types of decisions that can go into that. How fast does this thing move? What letters are being used to control the various things that need to be controlled? Do I have to look around for a particular key to make something happen, or can I just rest my hand in one spot and toggle two different buttons that I'm pressing?
Cool. Thanks, Bob. All right. There's still more to do on the bin, right? But let's go ahead and start getting those falling pieces started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, maybe I'll start with a piece of trash. So I'm going to go ahead and add another costume. So I'm going to click on Choose Sprite. And I'm going to pick something that to me feels like a piece of trash, right? And so it can be anything that you want that's not recyclable. I think I had somebody pick a zebra one time. I guess a zebra's trash. I think what I'll do is I think I did boots before, or shoes or something like that. Where's shoes or boots? I know I can't find what I did before.
Oh, I think they are one of those animation ones of boots that you were just on. Maybe, I don't know where you just were. Maybe it was shoes, but it was animating through a series of shoes.
Oh, was it in shoes?
Shoes, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's right there.
This is kind of interesting. This would be a good one to start with. So this is actually going to bring up a great point. So I picked shoes, but you can actually see that shoes has a number of costumes already. Maybe I'll mess up roller skates, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to actually call the sprite like piece of trash. Or maybe for short, I could just call it trash, right? And then we're going to have different costumes for different things that are trash. Now you'll notice that before what I did over here is I clicked choose a sprite and it gave me a new sprite, which is this thing here. But there's also another button over here. So if you're in the costumes area, there's another button over here where you can just add another costume. And so what I want to do as another piece of trash is like a tennis ball. There you go. Here's a tennis ball. And so, that's an ugly looking tennis ball. And so you're going to actually add a couple pieces of trash. I think that I had two. And that's going to mean two different costumes. So I'm going to get myself down to two. Oh, those things are awesome. And I'm going to just get myself down to two just to keep it simple. And I've got my roller skates here and my tennis ball. Now, you wouldn't throw away perfectly good roller skates. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to kind of like try to mess them up somehow, right? And so I think that if you, maybe you can click on them and you can like, let's see here. How did I do that before, Bob? Do you have any idea?
Well,
ungroup. That's what I want to do. Check this out.
Grouped.
Yeah.
I was going to say, a lot of times when you do drawing software, things are grouped. And so you saw as Dave was initially clicking, and if he clicks on the right one, you'll notice that it's still all grouped together as a solid entity. And so whenever he drags that around, the whole roller skate moves. When he clicked the ungroup button, what it did is it separated all of the individual shapes that went into making those roller skates and allows them to be individually selected and thus individually moved, edited, etc. And so what Dave's doing is he's doing an outstanding job turning what was otherwise a perfectly good pair of roller skates into what is hopefully clearly trash.
Clearly trash.
He gets to decide as he's looking at this, when they fall, we want to make sure it looks like an individual piece of trash that this bin can catch. And so he's making sure that things are together and kind of in a tight enough area that it's going to be contained. And if something else falls, it won't be confusing as whether it's part of this or part of its own thing.
I may have over-trashed these skates. They barely look like skates anymore.
They look like they used to be something. But they're clearly trash now.
Cool. The other thing you could do if you wanted to is you could use, by the way, this is kind of going overboard. This is what's called vector art. You can see how there's like individual pieces to them. And this one's what's called a bitmap or raster graphics. There's no like grabbing pieces on this guy. But what I can do is I can just like erase like parts of him. 40 is a little big there. Maybe I'll go with 20.
Yeah, I think we might have even just done a pen last time and just kind of carved
it.
I don't remember for sure. But yeah, I think you've made that look trash-like.
Cool. Excellent. All right. There we go. That looks nice and trash-like. By the way, you can switch it from vector and bit map graphics if you want. So, for example, I can make this tennis ball like a huge tennis ball in vector mode, but that would be hard to do in the bitmap mode. Doesn't really matter. Now,
for the viewers, if you were to go back to that tennis ball and try to select what you added to it and move it, is that something that can be done?
So you can select if you're in vector mode, you can select it and move it. If you're in bitmap mode, it's like an oil painting, right? Like you can't select anything when you're in bitmap mode. So vector mode is kind of like more editable, like you can like do things. And so like if you draw something in vector mode, you can select it and like tweak it later. So vector mode is better. I'm just going to kind of tell you. But if you go into bitmap mode, it's just like a painting, right? And there's no selecting stuff in bitmap mode. But it's just kind of fun.
When you go to vector, you cannot select the things that had previously been drawn in bitmap mode.
Correct. And when you go vector to bitmap and then back to vector, you lost things that used to be vectors. So yeah, you can play with it. The nice thing is we're just making trash here, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect, but I got a couple pieces of trash.
Yeah. This is far deeper than you needed to know, but if you were drawing and you tried to select something and you couldn't undo it like we did with the roller skates, since Dave brought that up, I wanted to at least give you an explanation as to why you might not be able to do something that you were able to do over there.
Yep. And then this is the trash. I'm going to make another sprite, which is the recyclables. But I think just to kind of like get some progress on code, I think I'm going to write some code on the pieces of trash. And so we've got a classic problem whenever we're making games. We actually want, if you look at it and you play like the solution here, you can see how there's like many things falling at the same time. And these are actually both pieces of trash. In fact, sometimes if you get really lucky, there were two glasses on the screen at the same time. And so you can see that another glass here and a glass over there. We're doing something sneaky here, and it's called cloning. So we're going to make a lot of clones of this. And as soon as you want to start making more advanced Scratch games, you're going to have to learn how clones work. Now, with clones, you actually have a different event that you worry about. So sometimes you worry about when green flag clicked. I know this is funny, but the only thing we're going to do when the green flag is clicked is we're going to actually just hide the sprite. That's kind of weird, isn't it? And that's because the original, like here's the original, the only thing I want to do when the green flag is clicked, so green flag clicked, I just wanted to hide the original. Because eventually what I'm going to do is, and you can bring them back, by the way, you can click on show or hide here. Eventually I'm going to have clones do stuff. And so what I actually want to do is I want to have, when the green flag is clicked, hide the original. And then this is kind of weird. The event for when I start as clone, the event for that is actually at the bottom of the control section. Now, whenever I first saw that, I was a little baffled because it's like, why do they put an event? You can see from the shape that it's an event, right? Why did they put an event in with the control? Well, it's because there's actually 3 commands related to clones, and they just wanted to keep them all together, right? So we'll go ahead and take when I start as clone and drop it over here. Now, when I start as a clone, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to come to a random spot at the top of the screen. We're going to also have to randomly switch to a costume of our choosing. All right, so how do we do random costumes? Well, first we need to find the costume command. So it's over in looks. Switch to costume. And so you can see that we can switch to tennis ball or shoes. So whenever we start as a clone, we can pick either of these things. We want it to be random though. So how do we do random? And so random is in the operators. And this is a neat little trick. So you can refer to costumes by their name, tennis ball or shoes. You can also refer to them by number. So do this for me. Grab this pick random. And right now it says 1 to 10. Well, we only have 2 costumes. So this one's considered, you can see the little 1 up here and the little 2 right there. So we want to pick between 1 and 2. So that's cool. And so now when I start as a clone, it picks a random costume. The next thing I want to do is I want my trash to start falling from the sky, right? So I want it to be somewhere along the sky. So the Y, if you look right here, you can see the Y, it says about 175. You can see that's a pretty good Y starting value. So I'll just say motion, go to XY. So starting at about 175 is where the Y is going to be. But now the X, we want the X to also be random. So we're doing a lot with these random things. Do you guys remember where random is? I'll give you a hint. It's green. It's in operators. And so this time we want a very different range for the random. And so before it said 1 to 10. So if you think about what 1 to 10 would be, if I put in an X of 1, it would be right there. If I put in an X of 10, so I'm just kind of typing it in right here just to see like where that is. You can see that's not actually very big of a range. Bob, how should they figure out what it is? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention a couple things. If they watched the first video in our sequence, they would have actually remembered that when we were drawing with our turtle, we were looking at a grid that would tell us exactly the X and Y positions on the screen. So if you did that video, you might recall exactly what that looked like. If you didn't do that video, I invite you to go do that. But the other way that you can do it is just by trying things. We've talked a lot about trial and error and how programmers try things, they look and see if it worked or not, and then they iterate. You can see as Dave was typing in these numbers, the ball would move. Clearly, -1 and 1 were near the center, 10 moved a little bit. You can just try other numbers. What happens if you try 285? Can we see it anymore?
It stops
way
it
off
on the
to
side.
the right. Oh, and actually, it looks like it reset your number to 244. So that must be a maximum that the program Scratch sets for you. So if you try to go too high, it puts it to where it says is the absolute rightmost spot on the screen. And so as Dave's doing right now, you might want to adjust it for our game and make it a realistic position. Looks like he's settled on 220. And before he does the other spot and types it in here, I want you to think about if we want this to be symmetric, might be a big word, we want it to be the same on the left and the right, what number would we also have to put in to make it look the same on the left? All right, so yeah, if you thought about it a little bit, it's just going to be the negative of that number. And so now Dave's put in a random of -220 to +220. I don't know the state of the rest of the program. If you were to hit run right now, I don't know if we have anything off that's going to fire these clones, but maybe we could just do something that fires a couple off so we can see how this looks before we go any further.
Let's see here. Is there a good way to fire?
Would that be quick?
So it will, but let's just add a couple lines of code to do it. We'll do it the right way. The first thing I want to say is that the main one got hidden, and then these clones are of the main one, so they're going to also be hidden. So actually, what you want to do before we go make them is show it, because otherwise you won't see it, right? It won't look like much. So like if I hit the green flag right now, it makes that one go away. Check. But there's nobody making clones yet, so we're going to need to make clones, and this is what Bob was asking for us to do. But it is actually the next thing we're going to do in the regularly scheduled program, so we may as well just go do it. The question is, who has the code to make the clones, right? So you could put it inside this file, but what I like to do is I want to sometimes make trash, sometimes make recyclables, and so I don't want trash to make both. I want somebody who's like outside of them to make both, right? So the person who I'm going to have do it is actually the backdrop. So if you click on the backdrop here, so you click right where my mouse is, you can see that the backdrop can actually have code as well. So the bowl has some code, the trash has some code, and the backdrop can have some code. And so what the backdrop's job is going to be is he's the clone maker, right? So that's all he does. So when he's clicked, he is going to forever, so control forever, he's going to forever make either trash or recyclables. That's just what he's going to do. So he's going to make one or the other. Now, right now we only have trash, and we're going to keep working with trash for a little while, but I want to plan ahead personally, and I want to go ahead and grab this if, then, else. Now, we haven't used one of these before. We've used this one, if, then. It's like, if this thing is true, then run this code. This one reads a little different. So if this condition, which we have not put in yet, if this thing is true, run this top code. Else, meaning if it's not true, else run this code down here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily put in a statement here which is always true. This will be kind of funny. So the statement I'm going to put in here is an operator. And you can see that it's got little diamond tips on it. So you can see that it fits in there. It's a hexagon, right? So we just drag it and we put it in there. You've always got to be careful when you put these in here. You can see how it kind of outlines in white whenever you've got it good. I like to put in the left tip just to drop it in there. And I'm going to put in the world's most ridiculous statement. If 1 equals 1, right? So just, that's true, right? So it's going to always run this top code. Why did I do this? It's because eventually I'm going to put in something that randomizes it. So I'm going to use like a random thing. And sometimes it'll be trash, sometimes it'll be recycling. And what I want to do here is I want to go into control. Control, as you remember, is they put all the clone stuff down here in control. And so I've got this create clone of. So I want to create a clone of. Bob, do I want to make a clone of the bowl? No.
I don't think that would make as much sense as cloning the trash.
Yeah, clone a piece of trash. And so right now we're going to make a piece of trash. Bob, if I ran this for 1 second, how many clones would it make?
Oh boy, let's see. I don't see any delays in here. For anybody that's listening that knows about processing speed and how fast a program runs, if you don't slow it down, it's going to go as fast as the processor is going to allow it to go. And I would assume this would fill up very, very quickly. We see the top of the screen literally being littered with trash of the two varieties. So we did see, it was hard to see, but we did see that both the tennis ball and the broken roller skates were being added to the top. But once we add gravity to this, if these things were falling, it would happen at such a fast rate, we would not be able to effectively play this game. So I think where we're going next is figuring out how to slow this down a little bit.
Yeah, let's slow it down. Let's put on, and you can adjust this once you start making the game. Let's just make 2 seconds between them for now. And maybe that's too fast for you. Maybe you'll need it to be like 5, or maybe you'll like it fast, and maybe we'll take it down to 1. But let's definitely put some sort of delay in there. Now, for right now... Yep, go ahead.
But I was just going to mention, if you're taking notes and really thinking about what things might I change later that will make this game more interesting to play, that might be one of the things you remember to change. If you get good at this game and you decide after a while of playing it you want it to go faster, you can always come back as the creator of this game. You can always come back and lower that wait time.
Yeah. I think
if it was too fast, make it higher. This is where the trial and error comes in.
I suspect that later I'm going to make my left and right arrows for the recycling bin go faster. That's my guess. All right. So
also a variable. Yeah.
So
it's something that you can control.
Yeah. So things are going good. We're making clones. They're just not very exciting yet, right? So they're just hanging out up here. And obviously, well, here you go. We'll just kind of remind ourselves of what the solution does on this thing. All right, so here's my solution. You can see that they're dropping down here. And so what they need to do is they need to drop. I'll go ahead and stop it here. They need to drop and then either get caught or hit the ground. So that's kind of what they were doing there. So let's go ahead and do that. So if they're dropping, we're going to need to have code that loops, and we just want it to go forever. So we're going to have to go find a forever loop. It's a pretty classic style of coding in Scratch. You see it all the time. You do like some setup things first, and then you drop into your forever loop. And as soon as you start to see these like common patterns, you'll just be able to make cooler and cooler things with your game. So what they're going to need to do is they're going to need to fall. And so there's a couple ways to fall. You could say move, but then that depends on which way they're pointing. I actually prefer change Y by. And here you can set your speed and you can decide what a good speed is. I'm going to start with 2. So now if I hit the green flag, what should happen is they should start falling. They don't seem to be falling very good. I think I've made a weird bug. Let me see if I can figure out what I've done here. I think maybe I started them too high. I'm just curious.
You're changing Y. Actually,
yeah.
let's let the folks figure this
Yeah,
out.
this is great.
Dave started this at a Y of 175. He thought maybe it was too high, so he changed it to 160. But that's not the issue. When you have something at 175, he's changing it by 2. What is that doing to that number? It's actually making it bigger. So Dave's trash was trying to go up. And it had nowhere to go. So gravity, we want to go down.
Yeah, let's go down. I make these mistakes for you. You're welcome.
Yeah, this is how everybody learns.
There we go. That seems like falling. All right, so I've got some trash over here, and then I'm going to have some trash over here. Yeah, I don't think I can handle this bin being so slow. But you can see that 2 seconds actually, like they come out pretty quick, even with 2 seconds. Like I was afraid 2 seconds was going to be too long, but they're falling out pretty good.
And clearly right now the trash bin isn't catching these. So as you start to think about what else do we have to implement in our code, what else do we have to do, we're going to have to figure out a way to make these things get caught. As Dave said, we're going to have to add recycling. So these are the things that are coming ahead.
Cool. So you got to start somewhere. You've got to decide what it is that you want to implement next. I think what I'm going to implement next is actually hitting the ground. So there's 3 categories that something can go into. Maybe you don't catch it. So that's like a category where you just didn't catch it. Maybe you caught it, but you caught it with the wrong type of bin. So like these are all trash. But if I accidentally throw my trash in the recycling, that's bad, right? So that's a category. Or maybe you did good, right? You caught it and you were correct. So there's actually 3 different variables that we want to keep track of. And I think I'm going to do the ones that we don't catch first, but I might go ahead and prepare all 3 variables. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure we did a variable in the last program we wrote. So variable is this fancy word that Dave mentioned. It's a section that the mouse is hovered over right now. In programming, a variable, there's the beginning of that word. It sounds like vary. You might know what vary means. It changes. And so a variable is something that stores a value for us, but can change. And that's exactly what we want in this case. As Dave said, there's 3 different categories of things that we want to remember. We want to remember how many times a trash or recycling has hit the ground. We want to remember how many times we've caught things incorrectly. And we want to remember how many times we've caught things correctly. And so in programming, when you want to remember things, you use what's called a variable. And that number can change, but it also remembers things for you. That's how you keep track of things in your program, because your program is always moving forward and at different states as it's being played.
Cool. Love having Bob's comments whenever I go too fast, plowing over important concepts. So we want to make a variable to keep track of the state, to keep track of a number. So you click on variables, and then you usually like to have names for them. They made one variable for you, and the name of this variable is called my variable. Well, that's kind of a ridiculous name, but they had to put in some sort of placeholder. If you don't like the one that they put in for you, you can actually right click on it and you can delete it or you can rename it. I don't know why, but I'm just going to delete it just to get rid of it. Now, by deleting it, it made this area look really confusing, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. Click on make a variable. And then you just have to decide. This can be the hardest part of programming. What do I name these things, right? So there's things that are like, and just like, how do I say it? It's like things that are not caught. So I'll just say.
I think we called that hits ground in the last game. We said things that would hit the ground classified as not being caught. And I don't remember if we kept a space in there or not. But usually in programming, it's not something that Scratch cares about because Scratch has a lot more flexibility. But when you graduate on or move on to typed coding, whenever you have a space in between words, the program, it's called a compiler, whatever's reading your program to figure out what to do, thinks that next thing, the space is separating things. And so generally you keep variables in one continuous string of characters or letters or numbers for that matter. Yeah. So I think Dave has hit ground here or hits ground, whatever makes sense.
Which way do you want me to do it? I'm going to put a space in it.
Oh, yeah, you can use a space in here. It's just kind of fast forwarding for those that might have advanced knowledge.
Just because it's Scratch, you can put spaces in, but in most languages, you can't.
And I would say the important thing about variables is you want them to make sense to you and to what they're doing, right? Like this variable is going to keep track of how many times something hits the ground, and it's named hit ground. So it's a very memorable variable name. A lot of times programmers will, get fancy and just use like a letter or a couple letters to like name their variables. And it might work for the 30 minutes that you're writing that program, but then when you look at that code a week later or a month later or a year later, or if someone else looks at your code, they're wondering, what does HG mean? What? I don't understand. And so it helps, especially as you're starting out, to create variable names that actually have words that match to what they're doing.
Cool. All right, so there's a couple things you have to decide when you make a variable. When the program starts, what do you want its initial value to be? And so I would say that it makes sense for this thing to start off at a value of 0. Now, you could, just because I'm sitting right here, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on right here on the when green flag clicked. So I'm going to set hit ground to be 0 just right here because it's an easy spot. Now, if I had put it over here on his green flag, that would have also worked. I could have put it inside of here. That would have also worked. But just because I was looking at this guy's code, I put it right here. If I was going to be argumentative about where it's the most elegant, maybe I'd put it on the backdrop, but I don't really care. All right, next I want to do is, when do I hit the ground? Like, what criteria do I hit the ground? So if I show this again, really I hit the ground like right about there, right? So it looks like I hit the ground at about 162. And so as I'm falling, and the number doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I've got to go to control. If my Y value, so I've got to compare my Y value against some number. So my Y value is less than that negative 162, then I've hit the ground, right? And so to get a comparator to go into this if statement, that's in operators. I'm going to choose this middle one of these three that says less than. So if my Y value is less than, and what the heck, I'll use the number 162. It doesn't really matter, anywhere around that number. Maybe you want to let them not catch it when it gets below like that level, right? So maybe it's negative 150 is what would make your game better. Doesn't matter. So somewhere in that range. But if the Y value is less than that, so how do we get the Y value? That's actually a built-in variable. So if we go to motion, we can go to, see how there's there's 3 of them that are built in. So it's X position, it's Y position, it's direction. They're built in, which is cool. And so we want the Y position. So if my Y is less than that, and so less than means I'm like more negative. So like if I'm down here, then what I want to do is I want to increase that variable hit ground. So
And Dave, if you could do that again really quick, you had the ball in this spot, you see it's at negative 144. And as he said, when he moved it down, as he slid that ball down, he said more negative is bigger. Once he gets it past that point and lets go, now you see it's at negative 154. It's a larger number, negative 154. But as you go more negative, that's considered less. So that's what he's clarifying there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that as well. So if this happens, I want to change, because I want to increase it. I want to change hit ground by 1. And then also, if you remember, they just kind of piled up on the ground down here. And I actually want them to, and you can still catch them when they're on the ground, strangely enough. I want them to disappear, right? And when it's a clone, you typically don't hide it. You just make the clone go away. And so all things with clones are in the control area. They're at the bottom.
Can you show that before you do it? When you're writing these programs, oftentimes you won't think of these things. Dave and I, when we were designing this game, we ran it and then we're like, oh, yeah, we forgot. We have to get rid of these things. And so when you're playing this game and you notice this, that's how you know. I have to do an additional step. I have to make these things go away. I don't want you to think it's magic or tremendous forethought that often leads to these steps. This is experience and actually having already planned this game that allowed us to know that this was a good next step. But if you had not put it in, this is what would happen, and it's not a big deal. You just realize, oh, okay, another thing I have to put into my code is something to get rid of this accumulating trash down here.
And the real reason it's a problem is because as soon as we add code to collect things, then you can collect things right off the ground, and then it's not really a game, right? It's just a
pretty easy game.
I'll collect it when I get to you.
Actually, it'd be pretty hard to change to the correct bin as you're diving over a sea of trash and recycling.
All right, so at any rate, the last command inside the control area, the last one that's orange, is delete this clone. And so I'm going to take this, and I'm going to be very careful about where I put it, because if I were to put it here, it would just happen immediately. I want it to be inside the if statement right after this, where I change the variable. So you got to be really careful about where you drop things. Another fun thing about that command is notice how the bottom is like flat. It's like done. You can't add more code after it. It's like the end of the road, Jack. And so now if I run it, what happens is when it gets below that, it'll actually go away. Blink, blink. And you also notice that the counter's not going crazy. If your eyes were really good before, the counter was just going nuts. It was like in the tens of thousands, I think. Great. And so now I've got up until it gets to that height before it goes away. So you can see that there's a little bit of leeway to where I can still kind of catch it with like the middle of my trash can. I consider that a feature. If you don't want to catch it with the middle of your trash can, right there, I can still save it. I think that's going to be fun, but you can decide what you want to do. All right. That's one of the 3 things that can happen. We did the easy one first. Now the other one is a little sneakier, right? So if you hit the trash can, so like let's say you hit the trash can, you've got to know whether it's currently in recycling bin mode or whether it's currently in trash can mode. So you got to know which it is. So we're going to actually have to introduce a variable that keeps track of trash can mode or recycling mode. And that's actually done back over in the bowl. So here's where we say go to recycling. Here's where we say go to trash. We're going to need a variable just that keeps track of that so that other people can know what we are. So let's go back to variables again, and let's go ahead and make a variable. And this variable, what we really want to know is we want to know, is it the trash can or is it the recycling bin? And so I'm just going to say like, is trash can, or is trash bin, or is recycling bin. You can decide what you want to call it, right? So I'm going to say is trash bin. And I've got this plan where I kind of think of 1 as being like a true statement. It's like, is trash bin? Yes. Yes, it is. Number 1, true. If it's not, then I just say the number 0. So it's like, nope, not the trash bin. That is something you'll see in programming where 1 is true and 0 is false all the time. So is trash bin is the question. And what I want to do is, and right now you can see that it shows it up here. That's good for right now. Eventually we'll take that off. is I want to set it. So if I click R, then I don't want to set hit ground. I want to set is trash bin. Set is trash bin to 0 because it's a false statement. And then in the other one, T, I want to take set and not hit ground. I want to set is trash bin to the number 1. And so now when I play, so you can watch up here as I play, as I hit T, that makes it the trash bin, and it makes this variable 1. And then as I hit R, it makes it a recycling, and that's a 0, right? And so this variable can communicate with the other sprites, the state of the trash can. Another thing that's fun with variables is you don't have to show them on the screen. So like a user doesn't need that variable. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to actually uncheck this box and watch what happens. It hides it from the user who's playing your game. So sometimes users want to see variables, sometimes they don't want to see them, right? You just want to use them in your code. Both are still variables. It's just whether you see them or not. All right, so let's go back over to the piece of trash. Blink. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our next condition. So this next condition is when you're touching the trash bin. That's question number 1. Are you touching the trash bin? And then question number 2 is it currently a trash bin or a recycling bin, right? So we got to have 2 questions. So go to control. The first question is just a regular old if statement. So I want to make sure to put it like right on the bottom here. Notice how it's not wrapping the other if statement or anything like that. And he's going to ask, are you touching the trash bin? And so touching is something that sensing can do for us. So go into sensing and find where it says touching mouse pointer. Now, obviously, mouse pointer has a little white down arrow here, so it's going to be changeable. So I'm going to drop it in there. I like to take the left edge and drop it in there. And instead of mouse pointer, I want to switch it to saying, am I touching the bowl? So this piece of trash is the one whose code this is. He says, am I touching the bowl? And then the code that's in here will only run when you are in fact touching the bowl. Now, if you think about it, what do we need in here? Well, we need another if statement, but we need one of those fancy ones. To me, this looks like the letter E, right? So we need one of these fancy if, then, else if statements. And it's going to go on the inside. It's so easy to accidentally put it in the wrong place. If you do, no big deal. You just drag it from there and you get it to go to the right place. And you can compare to mine and you can see it's like there's a forever and it's got 2 ifs in it. This top if only has those 2 commands in it. This bottom if has this if else in it. And if yours is different, make it match mine. You can slide around until you get there. Now this is going to be a little harder. What I really want to see is I want to see that variable and I want to know if it's 0 or 1. So I'm going to have an operator. The operator that I want is the equals operator. There it is right there. And so what we're going to check is we're going to check that variable for if it's 1 or if it's 0. So that variable is over in variables. Is trash bin. So if it is trash bin, and this is a piece of trash, so if it's 1, then you did good, right? So like, I know nobody likes to throw away trash, but if you're going to throw away trash, definitely put it into a trash bin. So this is like correctly caught, right? And so in the same way that we have hits ground, we're going to have 2 more. We're going to have like a correctly caught and an incorrectly caught. You could name them whatever you wanted. If you want to, you could call it good and bad. You could call it right and wrong. But I prefer to use something that's like very descriptive. And so I'm going to type correctly caught. If typing is a pain for you, get a grown-up to help you type, right? But correctly caught is what I'm going to call this variable. And you can see that it shows up right up there. And then while
Dave, I don't know if we talked about this before. We were making this variable. I think you might have, and I think we might have gotten caught up on naming things. Go ahead. You can get ready to make the next variable. When you click on it, there's this question that's below it: for all sprites or for this sprite only. And then there's also this cloud variable.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about when you might want to click or not click. I mean,
Yeah.
one of these I think we just ignore. We're never going to click the cloud variable.
Yeah,
But
so-
for all sprites or for this sprite only, what would make that decision?
Yeah, so awesome question. So yeah, so as Bob mentioned, cloud variable you never check. I've been coding in Scratch for 10 years. I've never needed it, right? This one is a choice. Like, is this variable like everybody might need it, or is it used strictly inside of me and my world, right? So if it's like, let's say I know my speed and I might change my speed and nobody else cares about my speed, it's just mine, you could use for this sprite only. To be honest, most of the time, I just use for all sprites and I don't think about it, right? And because they also show up on the screen cleaner. Whenever you say for this sprite, the text that shows on the screen, it's very ugly. And you can try it sometime to see. But in general, I just use for all sprites, so just share it amongst everybody. And so I'm going to call this one incorrectly caught. Trying not to make typos. And so now I've got these three variables. And by the way, you could totally like move these around however you want. So I think that I'll just kind of do them across the top of the screen here. So total that hit the ground, for me, caught correctly ended up in the middle, and incorrectly caught ended up in the right. You can shuffle those around however you want. And just like we did with hit ground, so somewhere we had to set them to 0. We could do that inside of this sprite. We could do it inside of the bowl. We could do it inside the backdrop. Doesn't matter. But somewhere I've got to set it to 0. Since I'm in this code right now, I'm going to go ahead and do it right here. So when the green flag is clicked, I want to set hit ground to 0, correctly caught to 0, and incorrectly caught also to 0. So that should be sufficient. If I was going to be really picky, I suppose I would put these somewhere else. I guess they should go in the bowl. Technically, they should go in here. I'll tell you what, you can leave them if you want. I'm going to move them because it bothers me, right? Here's how you move something. First, you disconnect it. All right, so now it's just kind of separate. Then you grab it, and then I like to drop it on another sprite. So see how the bowl kind of wiggled there when I got on it? Wiggle, wiggle. And so if I drop it over there, that makes a copy of it. And so now it's over here on the bowls code as well. So it's in both places now. And just because like I must be a little OCD, it makes the most sense to me to have it be inside this guy. I moved it over here because he's the one who's going to later check to see if the total is like a winning score or a losing score. And so to me, I thought I'd put it over here on the bowl. Does not matter, but I couldn't take it. All right, so I put them on the bowl. You can move them if you want. I just thought that I would. Now that they're over on the bowl, I don't need them here. The way you delete something is you just drop it back over into the toolbox, and it just kind of like poof goes away. All right, moving on. If it's trash and it's a trash bin, that should change caught correctly. Or correctly caught. If it's the opposite, then that should modify incorrectly caught. Does that make sense? It takes my brain a little bit to get around this. So I'm trash. It's a trash bin. Increment correctly caught by 1. If it's the recycling bin, then I do incorrectly caught. We've got quite a bit we can test here. All right, so this is trash. So I caught it. And you can see that something neat happened. I got a lot of points. So I got, can you figure out why I got so many points? Bob, what did we do wrong? Or what did I do wrong? Shouldn't blame Bob.
Well, it's not wrong. Again, this is how coding works, right? The obvious thing to consider is when this thing touches you, you want to go ahead and add a point. And that's that. And what we're seeing is, if Dave just sits here for a second, watch how long that roller skate is touching the bin. So every time the program is checking to see if that bin is touching the roller skate, that code is going through and adding 1. And that's a lot of quick loops. So you'll see it's just 20, 30, 40 points at a time every time. Maybe you want to keep this in as a feature to just artificially increase your score. But if we're doing it right and we're really trying to count the things that we're correctly catching by item, then the right thing to do would be to have this thing disappear, or no longer be able to be counted once it's been caught.
Yep, agreed. All right. So, and by the way, I was also testing, if you switch to the recycling bin, which is the wrong type of bin to put this in, you can see that caught incorrectly also goes crazy. So really what I want to do is, well, first I want to stop it because I can't focus while it's going, is I want to, in the same way that I deleted the clone when I hit the ground, I want to delete the clone when I catch it. So we're going to take this delete clone. Now there's two places that you could put it. Before, you can see that we did it like immediately after where we changed the variable. And I could do that here. So I'm just kind of showing you. I could put one underneath this change variable and one under that change variable. That would be fine. If you want to really be efficient though, you only really need one. And there's this magic spot. It's right where my cursor's at, where we know that we're touching the bowl, and then whether it's a trash bin or not, that decides what kind of points you get. And then no matter which type of point you got, we actually want to delete it in both cases. So the most elegant place to put it is right where my cursor is at. Now the hard part of that is actually getting it into that right spot. So we want it to be right here. So you can see that this is obviously inside the forever loop. It's also inside the if touching bowl loop, but it's not within the is trash if statement, right? So does that make sense? So I'm going to put it right in there. And the nice thing about that is I only need one. If I'd put it right after the change, that would have worked, but I would have needed two commands, whereas this way I only needed one. All right, so I'm going to switch it to trash, and I'm going to try to get some points. There's 1 point. There's 2 points. Things are going good. 3, 4. I'm going to catch one wrong, so I'm going to hit R. Now I'm starting to get them wrong, so if you look up at caught, or incorrectly caught, it's going crazy. Not crazy, but it's going up. And so the goal...
Importantly, it's only going up by one.
Yeah, it's only going up by one each time.
It's only going up by the correct, the intended number, right? We intended when we wrote this game to go up by one each time an item was caught, incorrectly caught, or it hit the ground. So
cool. All right, so I'm pretty...
as advertised.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how things are going. And there's a few things that have to happen next. So trash is one type of object that falls from the sky, as we all know. And we also have recyclables that could fall as well. And so the interesting thing about recyclables, if you think about it, they share most of this code. Like there's actually, most of it is the same. And so it would be nice to like copy this whenever we do the recyclable. And there's a couple ways that you could copy it. One way that you could do it is you could just make the other sprite and then copy the code. The other way you could do it is you could duplicate this sprite and then change it. I think it's probably less confusing to just make a new sprite and then copy the code. So to make a new sprite, you click on this little circle, which is going to make, it's right by Bob over here. So I'm going to click on choose a sprite. I'm just choosing one from the library. To be honest, if you have the skills to get something from the internet, you could do that as well. But I'm just gonna pick something from the library. So what around my house do I throw away into the recycling bin? That would be a good thing to do. So we drink a lot of milk in my house. I love milk, and there's quite a few milk cartons here. I think I'm gonna make milk my recyclable.
I've visited Dave. Gallons of milk consumed by him and his family. Lots
and lots of milk. This milk is just a little bit on the big side. That's no big deal. I'm going to choose to change the size variable to about 60. That seems like a more reasonable size milk. And you can see that the sprite is called milk. Now that's actually not a very good name because I'm going to add another costume. I'm going to play with his costumes. This guy really is just a recyclable. Recyclable? Is that spelled right? That's not right. Bob, how do I spell recyclable? Recyclable.
I think you were actually
correct. I was right. Yeah, I was right. And I got a red underline whenever I tried my other.
I was impressed that it had a spell check.
I know.
You called the other one piece of trash.
So I could call this one piece of recycling.
or change the other one to trash, or keep them the way you have them. There's no requirement that you have consistency in the way that you phrase things. Piece of trash can be the name of the trash. Recyclable can be what you call the recyclable. It's really up to you.
Cool. I think since piece of trash doesn't fit on here, it says like ... I think I will actually prefer to change this one to trash. So I just change it to trash. I hit enter, and then it's just presto changeo, switch to the word trash, which is pretty neat.
Now you changed that in the middle after having written a bunch of code. Is there anything in your code that has to be looked at or changed, or does it all just work?
Yeah, let's go look at it. So if you go look at the bowl, you can see that whenever I hit T, it switched costume to, and it just changed it for me. Isn't that nice of them? So they are some pretty smart programmers. They knew that I'd want to change that, so they just did it for me. So thank you, Scratch team. Now,
well, that was actually the recycling title, I think. I think that was your bowl title.
Well, no. This right here. When it says switch, oh, you're right.
Yeah. It was the costume for your bowl. I actually don't think we ended up using the name of that in any spot.
Agreed.
But had you, I think Dave's absolutely right. I think it would have changed it automatically because it's just all tied together.
All right, let's do
the example. Here's how the example would be. I think right there in that line, right above where you are, bowl. If Dave changes bowl to bin, we'll see if we go back to that code area, bowl to bin. So that is an example of Scratch having your back, as you say, just automatically adjusting if you do make that type of a change. Some programming languages, when you get to your typing code, are not as friendly. So if you decide 100 lines of code in that you want to change the name of something, you might have to go and find all the places that you named it and rename it to adjust. But Scratch, very beginner friendly, very comfortable place to practice your coding. And when he changes his mind and decides to call something different, the program is very elegant to clean things up for you.
All right, the next thing I want to do is obviously Recyclable is going to need some code, but I actually want to do his costumes first. So if we look at trash and we go to costumes, we can see that there are two different costumes. One was a raggedy looking tennis ball. The other was some very beat up skates. If I go to Recyclable, we can see that it actually already has 5 costumes. Now, to be honest, they're all of milk, some with legs. That's kind of weird. And so I think what I want to do is I want to pick my favorite one. I think I'll do this like little wadded up one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the other ones and to get it down to just one. And also as a reminder, if you don't like his little arms and legs on here, like you can always delete them, right? Like you can edit these things, right? And that's actually really fun. And so I think that personally for me, I like this milk to look like this. If you're OCD, you can see the title of mine is Milk E. I'm going to get rid of that hyphen E and just have it be milk. Now what I want to do is I got it down to only one milk, but I'm going to pick some other type of recyclable to where this sprite could actually look like two different things, right? And now if you remember, if I were to click over here, that would add a whole new sprite. That's not what I want. That would add a whole new sprite because that like added recyclable. What I actually want to do is the button over here where we add an additional costume. So it's like another set of clothes that this recyclable can wear. So I'm going to go and click on choose a costume. And I'm going to pick something else that is recyclable. And now you can pick whatever, around your house that you have that happens to be in the Scratch library and recyclable. Bob, do you guys recycle glass where you're at?
We do.
You
glass,
do? Okay,
plastic, aluminum, and paper all go in the same bin, and then the folks at the recycling center figure that out. Part of sustainability in California is that they want to have as much as possible recycled. I'd say the one exception that I found here that was interesting while you're looking for the glass, I think we did water. There might be double.
Oh no, I found glass already. I was just going to find something that I could also recycle. Glass water right there. No, I'll do glass.
Yeah, pizza boxes. Domino's,
pizza
when you
boxes,
order Domino's, as it says on it, check your local recycling rules because we should be recyclable in California, at least in our
trash district, you cannot.
You cannot.
I usually rip the top off that has 0 pizza grease on it, but the bottom, even a speck of pizza grease, forget it. But I digress.
So where I live, we can't recycle glass. It's considered dangerous. But what you gonna do?
You know what? That it says glass on it, but I don't know if that's editable. That looks just like a plastic cup to me.
Okay, well, let's pretend like it's a plastic cup. There we go. All right. So how about we just call it cup? Not that the name here matters.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so now it's like a red Solo cup, right? I don't know if those are recyclable either. But all right, moving on. So we have our costumes for our recyclable. By the way, our trash is currently hidden because whenever you run this program, it hides it, right? But it's still there. It's just whether you do this show or hide, whether you see it or not. And my recyclable is currently visible. But once I run the program one time, it's going to go away. What I need is some code. So recyclable has no code. Trash has a bunch. Let's do that trick we did earlier where we grab it and we drop it on top of the glass. And I like it because it does this little like jiggle when you do it right. And I love that little jiggle. And so I want that when I start as clone code. I also want this when green flag clicked code. And here when you do that trick, it actually makes a copy of it, which is exactly what I want, right? So it's on the trash, and then when I go over to the recyclable, it puts it somewhere. Now it puts it somewhere. It actually, if you look really closely, it put them right on top of one another right there. So I'm going to drag them to kind of separate them out. Now right now, the code is identical for the two, and they're similar, so that's not terrible. But think about what needs to change. There's actually only one thing that needs to change in this whole thing.
It's a perfect time to pause the video and give yourself a minute to think about it, because I think if you look through each line, you might be able to figure it out. They paused. Good, Dave.
All right, they're back.
What is it?
All right, it is this one right here. So is trash bin 1? So caught correctly for trash was when that was a 1, but for recycling you want that to be a 0, right? That's the only change. Isn't that crazy? So
let's go. Can we go back and look at where we set that? I mean, just to remind ourselves.
Just to remind ourselves.
Trash bin got set when we were creating when we were changing the costume for our bin. And so when we press the R key, you see that it changes to the recycling bin. But we also answered that question of is trash bin with a 0. In programming, 0 is considered no, false. And so we use that to indicate that it's not a trash bin. And of course, when we press T and turn it to a trash bin, we set that variable to 1, which is true, yes. So now over in that other code where we're asking that question, is trash bin? We're looking to see if it's a 0 to tell us that it is a recycling bin. It's kind of opposite logic.
Cool. So, I broke it.
You broke it. What did you do?
I did. I broke it. So you know how we changed the name from piece of trash to trash? I think.
Did it actually have a change that made an impact?
The backdrop. We forgot to check the backdrop.
Let's look at it.
Plus, I think we need to fix something else in the backdrop. I switched it to trash.
Create clone of trash seems fine.
So something wasn't working. I'll say that. Now, while I'm over in the backdrop, hold on. I just want to show them again just to make sure. All right. So now it did work. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. I think I was I didn't hit the green flag. It's probably what happened actually. I probably double clicked on the code to run it instead of actually clicking on the green flag. So you might notice something. They're all trash, right? And so right now it's working. I even caught a couple correctly. I think I've got my recycling bin out. But it's working, but they're all trash. And the reason they're all trash is because of the code that's over on the backdrop. So the backdrop over here, you can see that it's only creating clones of trash because 1 is always equal to 1. I want this to be random. I want sometimes for it to be 1, sometimes for it to be not 1. And so I'm going to go to pick random. And you can do whatever you want here. You can do 0 to 1. That'd be just fine. So like if it's 0, it's false. You could do 1 to 2. Either way is fine, just as long as half the time it's 1 and the other half of the time it's not 1. And you can do that between 0 and 1, or you can do that between 1 and 2. Don't have a preference, whichever one you do. You have a preference, Bob?
I don't have a preference. I like 1 and 2 only because I think that if you go back and click on no, that's separate. Never mind. I was going to say the costume numbers, but yeah, we don't really care.
Don't care.
What I was going to share though was for any of you watching that know about decimals, you may wonder, are there any numbers between 1 and 2? Luckily, you may not remember this word, but integers or whole numbers are all the numbers that don't have decimals. And so luckily for this, it's literally only going to pick 1 or 2. It says 1, 2, 2, which suggests that there's a whole bunch of numbers in between. And if we had picked between 1 and 10, it would pick all those integers in between. But here it's literally just going to pick 1 or 2. So half the time it's going to be 1, half the time it's going to be 2.
So when it's 2, we want to create a clone of. Now I had to drop this in with the word bin, but I want to switch it now to the word recyclable. I think you actually can change it over here, but I rarely ever do it over there. I usually put it in, then change it. All right, so now I should have a game. So here comes some trash. So I catch it with my trash can. Here comes some recyclable. So I switch to R real quick. Recyclable over there. Recyclable over here. Trash. I'm too good. Recycle. Yes, I can recycle this. You'll notice that I've caught everything correctly so far. If I wanted to miss some, I could just like dodge them, right? So now it's like a game of dodgeball. And you'll notice that my number hitting the ground is going up. And then if I wanted to make some mistakes, what happened if I always had my recycling bin out? So there I caught a piece of trash with my recycling bin. Here I caught another piece of trash. I'm just really messing up with the trash here. Likewise, you can mess up if you try to trash things that are recyclable. Those also get caught incorrectly. So I think I've tested all the categories and ways we can do things. Cool. So the only problem with the game now, the game's going great. The only problem with the game now is you just play forever. Now, if you're happy playing forever, you could call the game done. But I personally, I like to win and lose things. I don't know why. That just makes it feel more complete to me. And so what I want to do is I want to have a win condition where it says you win the game, and I want to have a lose condition that's no good, right? So let's go over to the bin. And by the way, you might make it easier or harder depending on what you want to do. What I want to do is I'm going to go into the bin, and I want to add some more if statements. So if it's this key, do that. If it's this key, do that. I'm going to add 2 more if statements. So I'm going to grab an if statement and plop it on the bottom. And I'm going to grab an if statement and plop it below that. So I'm going to have some condition by which I win and some condition by which I lose. The conditions that I picked, which are pretty arbitrary, is let's do winning first. So if the number of caught correctly is greater than, I'll do greater than 50. So if the number of, go to variables, caught correctly, so if caught correctly is greater than 50, then you win. And the way we win is you can decide what to do and win. You can play a sound. You can do all kinds of things, right? So I'm going to just say, right now it says say hello, say you win. I'll do 3 seconds. And if I win, the rest of the game still moves, like the trash is still coming down. I consider that a feature. But I will go ahead and end the game after I say that for 3 seconds. And to end the game, like for real end it, it's in control, and it's this stop all. So I'm going to take this stop all and I'm going to put it right under the words here, this purple. Make sure you don't put it after the if statement. That would work out badly. So make sure you get it right next to the purple, right? So if you catch more than 50, which is a lot, you would win. And then we also need a lose condition. Lose is just a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to go, I'm going to go with greater than, instead of 50, I'm going to do 10. But really, what are the mistakes? So the mistakes are if it hits the ground, that was a mistake. or incorrectly caught is also a mistake. And so what I'm going to do is, if those two add up to 10, or more than 10, I guess it's 11 technically. If they add up to 11, then that's going to be a lose. By the way, if you did want it to lose at actually 10, you would say greater than 9. Or you could say equals 10, it would be all the same. But right here, I want to add them up. So fortunately, I'm in operators already. You can see how this has kind of like an oval shape. Well, these are ovals here. And I want to do addition. It's kind of cool. You can do like addition, subtraction, multiplication, all these things, right? And I want to do the addition of two different variables. So I want the hit the ground, making sure the left edge is in there, plus incorrectly caught. Incorrectly caught. Goes there. That line of code got a little long, but that's okay. And so if that happens, we're going to say, and I'm doing this kind of fast, but you can pause it if you need. We're going to say, you lose, man. All right, I'll leave off the man. You lose, person. And then I also, in this case, want to also stop all. Now this will take me just a little bit to test, definitely the 50. And so sometimes what I do is I cheat whenever I test it, because I don't want to have to like go all the way to 50 just to see if it works or not. So what I'm going to do is, just as a quick test, I'm going to say greater than 2, just as a quick test. I'll put it back in a minute, but I'm going to try to catch. So there's 1, recycling, 2, trash, 3. There you go. It says you win. And it says it for 3 seconds, and then the game pauses. So that worked great. So I'm going to put that one back to 50. This 9 versus 10, that's actually enough that I could wait for it, but I'm going to go ahead and take it down 2. I'm going to say greater than 2. So if I make 2 mistakes, so I'm going to let that one hit the ground, and that one hit the ground, and then as soon as that third one hits the ground, it should say you lose. You lose, and it says it for 3 seconds, and then it stops. Let's test some combination of the two just to make sure it works. So I'm going to call this guy trash. So that's a goof. I'm going to call this guy trash. That's a goof. I'm going to let that one hit the ground. Cool. So there's 3 mistakes. So you lose. Great. And then I put it back up to 9. Now, if I wanted to be a really good software developer, I would test the final product before I shipped it. That's usually a good thing. But since this is a video, I feel pretty good about it. I'm just going to let it go. All right, you want to take us through a couple of the things we learned, Dr. Bob, or you got to head out for today? You got to head out.
No, I got 1 minute.
Super.
I think that this was a fantastic program. It was long, as we said at the beginning of the video. This was a big program. There were a lot of things we did. We talked about how to clone things. We talked about variables. We talked about random numbers. We did some editing of our sprites and how they looked. We referred to our sprite costumes as numbers. We thought about X and Y coordinates, a little bit of review from the last video we did. We took it topic by topic, and the game dictated what we talked to you about. There are a number of different ways you can learn programming, and one of the things I love about this camp and these videos is that you get to be creating something fun and interesting to play, and through each need that the program has, we have to learn something else, or we have to explain or teach you something else. And so as you start getting more sophisticated, more developed, more experienced with your code writing, you'll do the same thing. You'll get to a point where you're stuck and you need to learn something, and Dave and I won't be there in a video to explain it to you, so that'll be the next thing that you look up. That'll be the next thing that you try to learn on your own. When I'm looking at the game here, I'm only thinking about the slight difference between the last game. One thing you might think about aesthetically or how it looks. A lot of times your good scores are on one side and your bad scores on the other. We have 2 bad scores, and right now there's 1 on each side. I think when we showed the solution at the beginning of this video, I think we had the 2 bad things on the right, and you can just slide that over if you decide you want to move that over. Or actually, I think that's the way it is here. Okay, so you already did move that in.
No, this is the solution. You're right. The solution was different.
This was the solution. Yes, exactly. So we had caught incorrectly and hits ground on the right, and so in our game, we could have done that too. If you decide, oh, you know what, I like the way that looked, you can just move them around and put your
put your good score in the upper left and put your bad scores in the right. You can stack them the way Dave has them there. I think when we made the solution, our only thought there is it would be that much longer that you wouldn't see trash or recycling if it was on the far right. But you get to think about all these little things when you're writing code and making a game. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun, and I think Dave will tell you that we're going to see you in the next video.
See you in the next video. Hey, don't forget, if you're signed in and you've validated your email address, you can also click on See Project Page, and this link that's up here, you can totally share with people, right? So I mean, definitely copy that link and send it to grandmother or grandfather, right? Whoever you want to send it to. But it's fun to share games. They'll be excited for you, right? So definitely share things. All right, thanks so much for joining us. We will see you. That's the wrong slide deck, so is that one. We will see you next time. Bye.